Gardener's World is now running for a full hour. So we have time to give you even more of what you love. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Now, this time of year, when you get warm days and cool nights and dampness in the ground, and we've had torrential rain here at Longmeadow with some quite hot sunshine, you get the most wonderful misty mornings. And the garden slowly reveals itself out of that mist. And then as the light lifts and sifts through the haze, you realize that amongst all the hedges, between all the plants, are thousands and thousands of cobwebs, as though mist has been trapped and spun and decorated. And then autumn progresses and that dies away. So these cobwebs, for me, are an absolute measure of the season. This week, Carol continues to look at plant families.
I love this flower. It's beautiful, and I'm pretty sure that it belongs to a family called Apiaceae, otherwise known as the carrot family.
Adam has been hard at work in his veg garden.
Raised beds really are a fantastic way to grow vegetables.
And Nick Mesa is on the west coast of Ireland, visiting an extraordinary forest of ferns.
I'm at Kells Bay, Kerry, where the local climate and conditions come together to create a very special garden.
And I shall be adding umbellifers to the garden, as well as planting bulbs for colour next spring. I don't do fine grass. We've got lots of grass here at Longmeadow. Someone once said to me, you have lots of grass, but you don't seem to have a lawn. I like grass as a green filler between spaces. And sometimes it's lovely to walk on, and sometimes it's very useful as a path. But whether you are a fanatical greenkeeper or whether, like me, you're fairly carefree about it, every now and then you do have to repair grass. And now is the perfect moment to do that. I'm just talking about repairing the bare patches that inevitably occur. And the thing to do is to take a bare area like this and then just start by cleaning out any weeds. What is it, Nige? Oh, it's gone back in. The first thing to do is just remove any obvious weeds. I've got a little dandelion there that can come out. You can use a trowel, or I do actually, and this is toys for boys. This is a Japanese weeding knife, and it's made of very soft metal, so you could never get a sharp edge onto it, but it's brilliant for this type of thing. So you just cut in there like that and take it out. What do you want? Go on, off you go. Move. No? Okay, don't move. The next stage is to either fork it over, if it's very, very compacted and heavy, or if it's reasonably light soil, you can just use a scratch rake and just rake like that. But in fact, I don't think that's going to quite do the job. I'm going to just ramp it up a bit. Yeah, you see, that's making more of an impression. It's very dry underneath the tree. What do you think now? There we go. Go on, off we go. I've mixed up a bucket which is half sharp sand, half sieved garden compost. So if we just sprinkle some of that on, the compost is going to give a little bit of goodness, and the sand is going to help the drainage. And then rake it so it's a little level. That is now ready to sprinkle grass seed onto. And at this time of year, when the air is warm, the ground is warm, and the nights aren't too cold, this will germinate very fast. So by about next April, you'll be mowing this and you won't even know that it's been done. So we'll sprinkle a little bit of seed onto that. When you buy a packet of grass seed, always give it a good shake before using it, because all grass seed will be a mixture of different types of grasses. So by shaking them, it means that when you sow them, you get an even spread. And then, whatever type of grass you're sowing and wherever you're sowing it, sow it thinly. You can buy grass seed mixes now for fine lawns, for hard-wearing football pitches, for shade. So just take stock and choose the right seed. But in general, you won't go wrong if it's mainly ryegrass. And then lightly rake it over. What I do then is just firm it in to get contact. So the seed has got good contact with the soil. But if it doesn't rain by the end of the day, certainly water it in with a gentle hose, because you don't want to push the seeds out. And that's a very simple job, but it is a good one to do, and particularly a good one to do now. Now, most of us grow shrubs of some kind in our gardens, and I bet most of us have one or two that have become a bit unruly. We don't quite know how to prune them. We don't want to lose them, but we're not quite sure how to manage them. And Nick Bailey has been to a garden filled with shrubs that have run amok, and he's there to sort them out.
Today, I've come to Windsor to look at a garden beset with a challenge that many gardeners face. This is the case of the overgrown shrubs with ideas above their station. Gardeners often start out with the best laid plans. We buy plants, get them into the garden, get them established, and then life takes over. And those little plants we put in turn into monsters. This climbing hydrangea, Hydrangea meticulous, has got totally out of control, so it needs a serious pruning job. And then this kerria has virtually been treated like a hedge. It's been clipped on the front, but hasn't had the kind of thinning it needs, so it's not flowering very well. More work to be done on that. Then, over on the other side of the garden here, there's a group of phormiums which are looking a bit sad, they've got a bit overgrown, so I need to move them through the whole border. And then some of these tired old shrubs that aren't performing very well can come out, and we can add some exciting, fresh planting. There's lots to do, so I better crack on. Climbing hydrangeas are normally pruned in spring, where you take the old flower buds off, and then it allows these new shoots to produce during the year, which will give next year's flowers. However, this one is totally out of control. You can see it's come nearly a metre away from the fence, and so we need to do a really radical prune. This hydrangea won't necessarily rejuvenate brilliantly from very old wood. Now, if you're not sure, one of the easiest ways is to make a little scrape on the surface of the stem to see if there's any green underneath, or you can just make little cuts until you hit live growth. It's as simple as that. So the 3 Ds, dead, diseased, and damaged wood, can come out at the same time. So each cut I'm making, I'm ensuring is about 1 centimetre ahead of a fresh bud or a fresh leaf. Having created this framework, next year we'll have a whole wall of foliage, and then the following year, a wall of flower. What I've decided to do over here is to leave this part of the plant unpruned, to let Hydrangea meticulous do what it does best, which is disguise things. With a young kerria, I would do a prune in spring, after flowering. But this one is old and overgrown and needs some serious work, so I'm going to do it now. Lots of the tips of this kerria have been chopped off, almost turning it into a hedge, and that's really not the ideal way to grow it if you want lots of flower. So I'm just tracing these back to the base and removing them. And then once the framework is clear, I'm going to remove about 1/3 of the older stems, also right down to the base. Once it's been rejuvenated, the best way to deal with a shrub like this kerria, which shoots from the base, is to give it a thin every spring after it's flowered. With the last bits of dead removed, that's the rejuvenation complete. Passion flowers are beautiful, but this one is on the rampage and needs a bit of a gentle prune to bring it back under control. In front of it is a hypericum and a hebe, both of which are slightly past their sell-by date, so I'm going to take them out and replace them. Now I've cleared the bed, it's time to tackle the phormiums. There's two different forms growing here. This is Phormium tenax, with very straight sword-like leaves. And back here is Phormium cookianum, with these slightly softer, more lax leaves. Both beautiful plants. Just taking out some of the dead leaves from the base here, you won't be able to pull them out. They're so, so tough, so you'll need the secateurs. So I'm holding the leaves back so I can get to the base. It's a little bit like sheep shearing. Luckily, this Phormium cookianum is in a pot, so I'm going to move it further down the bed. This position is so much sunnier that it will produce a wonderful dome of foliage now, and it will flower as well. Where it was previously tucked behind the other Phormiums, it just couldn't perform. This is its perfect spot. Don't be afraid to use your boot if you're planting larger, stocky shrubs like this. It will just make sure that the soil firms in well around the root ball and the plant can start to absorb moisture as soon as it's in the ground. Firm down in layers as you go. Don't be tempted to wait till the end and squash it all down the sides. Now I've planted the Phormium, I'm going to add some extra plants into the bed to contrast and complement with its form and foliage. I've gone for Gora Pink Panache. It's brilliant for late colour, really fresh and zesty. Behind, we've got Milianthus major, which makes a great contrast. Coming a bit further forward, the Russian sage, or Perovskia, and that's much lighter. A sedum and anemone Honorine Joubert. Well, that's the last plant in. So, having moved the Phormium up to here, we've now got a lovely repetition or continuity through the border. And then with the mix of plants that I've introduced, there'll be great colour, form, and contrast for many years to come.
For the past few weeks, Carol has been visiting RHS Rosemore in Devon to explore the range of plants within different plant families.
I love this flower. It's beautiful, and I'm pretty sure that it belongs to a family called Apiaceae, otherwise known as the carrot family. Apiaceae are mainly annuals, biennials or perennials. Some are surprising, like the eryngium or sea holly, where the tiny flowers are arranged in a cone, often protected by spiky bracts. The family that we now call Apiaceae used to be called Umbelliferae. That's because of the shape of its flower heads. Umbra is the Latin for shadow, and each of these forms this sort of umbrella, if you like, this plateau. And each one is composed of lots and lots of tiny flowers which are gathered together in florets, all on their own stem, and all those stems emanate from one place on the stalk, making this flower head really delightful and instantly recognisable. This is Amimagus, but this is parsley. And fennel too has this same sort of construction. There are a few exceptions, as there always are with plant families, to this rule. But when it comes to their seeds, they've all got the same sort of structure. Whether it's Solenum, that's the seed of this one. Whether it's parsnips, Astrantes parsley, eryngiums or fennel. Each seed is in two parts, and each seed contains just one single seed, as you can see when I break this parsnip seed apart. So whether we eat the seed itself or the vegetables that grow from them, This family contains lots of really important foods, but beware, there are a few really nasty poisons which also are members of the family. Hemlock is one of them, and we all know how poisonous that is. The Astrantia is also a member of this intriguing family. Its flower heads are comprised of a pincushion of scores of minuscule flowers, encircled by papery bracts, ranging from deepest, darkest crimson through soft pinks to whites. They're perfect for all but the driest garden. Plant them in moist, fertile soil, in sun or partial shade, and keep deadheading to prolong flowering. Of all the members of the Apiaceae family, surely Selena must be the godfather. From the word go in the spring, it's magnificent. Great green doilies of finely cut foliage, and from them thrusting up these huge purply stems. Atop the stems, these great umbels of beautiful creamy white flowers. Many of the members of the family are biennials, short-lived, but not this plant. It goes on year after year. In common with the magnificent Selenum, the majority of the plants in this family are propagated from their seeds. One of the highlights of gardening is growing your own plants from seed. And if you've collected the seed yourself, so much the better. So I've got this lovely dry coriander seed now, and it's just about coming off those stems. And it's at that stage, it's just perfect for sowing. It's unusual coriander seed because it's big and round. Most umble seed is quite flat and skinny. And what you can do with big seed like this is to station sow it. That simply means that you actually place the seed where you want it to grow. It's a bit of a fiddle, but it's really worth it. And you just work out this little matrix of the seeds right across the surface of your tray. That means you won't get any damping off. Those seedlings won't be close to one another. They'll actually have their own sort of independence, their own little space to grow on. First, you'll see seed leaves, these sort of twin leaves that all seedlings produce. But then you'll see the proper sort of ferny leaf of coriander. And it's at that stage you can actually separate these and put them into separate little pots. Coriander's a superb herb, but the growing conditions are a bit different according to what you want to get out of it. If you want it for seed, grow it in hot, dry, sunny place, starve it a bit so it flowers and produces seed. If you want it for its leaves, then grow it in really lush conditions. That's it. And then, rather than watering from above, if you just put this into a tray of water, just an inch or so, couldn't be easier. The umbel family, Apiaceae, has got all sorts of culinary plants in it, but also lots of ornamentals too. Of all the culinary plants, many of them are herbs, and this is my very favourite herb of all. It's dill. I love these fine, feathery leaves. They're almost invisible. They just make these lovely, soft sort of shapes. And the flower heads are just so beautiful, absolutely symmetrical and covered with these tiny, bright yellow flowers. But whether you grow them because they're decorative or downright delicious, it's for sure that the umbel family, Apiaceae, has got lots to offer all us gardeners.
I have to say that I do like an umbellifer too. Fennel is always a star in the garden at this time of year. And umbellifers, of course, are brilliant for wildlife. They attract butterflies and bees. One of the things I like about fennel is if you get the seed and chew them, you get that lovely aniseedy flavour. And it's a great stomach settler. It really looks beautiful too, and will stay looking beautiful right into the new year. these become skeletons, bony memories of what they were in high summer, but beautiful. I've got here an umbellifer, which I often do have in the garden, but it comes and goes. It's called Angelica gigas. This is one of my favorite umbellifers of all, and I love it for two reasons. The first is obvious. It's this fantastic, rich plum color that it has. The other reason that it's so good in the garden is that at this time of year, almost no other plant is so addictive for bees and hoverflies and butterflies. So fantastic for improving the wildlife in the garden and also very beautiful. But it has one little quirky habit. These are plants that are monocarpic. And what that means is that usually, once it's flowered and set seed, it dies. Its sole purpose in life is to create seed, but unlike an annual, which does it within one growing season, this might take as long as 3 years to do it. But once it happens, there's no road back. The seed then falls to the ground and you get new plants growing. So if I wanted to have this colour next year, far better to plant one which doesn't have a flower stem than this which does. And this is more or less guaranteed to flower next year. Now, in fact, I'm going to do both. It's always a joy to plant into the jewel garden because the soil is like fruitcake. It's rich and crumbly and yet holds moisture. Now, if you're a gardener and you love soil, that's a very, very beautiful thing. If you're not a gardener, you'll be thinking I'm as daft as a brush, but there you go. It takes all sorts. If I pop this in, that will go there. Another problem with planting a mature angelica is that they have a taproot. And like all plants with a taproot, once that grows, they do not like disturbance. So the taproot is not being disturbed. There's a good root system, rather better root system than there was for the much bigger plant. So I'm going to put this in next to it. Of course, any plant, be it Angelica gigas or almost anything else, is going to be overshadowed by these bananas in full glory. And they are unbelievably exotic and dramatic. But Nick Mesa has been to see exotic plants of a very different type. And what he found really truly is breathtaking.
I'm at Kells Bay, Kerry, where the local climate and conditions come together to create a very special garden. A few weeks ago, I promised you a rainforest. Well, that's what I've come here to see. Kells Bay Garden is on the extreme southwestern tip of Ireland and covers 18 hectares. It's very naturalistic in style, thanks to a late Victorian craze for wild-looking gardens. They mix native and exotic plants together informally under the shelter of trees. The garden lies in a coastal valley which follows the course of a beautiful river which flows out to the sea. Even the river looks like it's flowing with Guinness. The water stained brown by peat which lies on the rain-drenched mountains that lie inland. With up to 2 meters of rain falling every year, the climate here just about qualifies as temperate rainforest. And parts of the garden really do look like a jungle. In the mild, moist atmosphere, plants here don't just grow on the ground, they grow on each other. Here, a group of native ferns jostle for position as epiphytes. Epiphytes are adapted for an aerial lifestyle. They perch on the branches of trees and shrubs, but are not parasites. They absorb moisture from humid air and often send their roots into damp moss instead of soil. Mosses and ferns blanket the trees and the rocks here, creating a living emerald carpet, just as they do in the forests of Costa Rica or New Zealand. For me, of all the plants that hail from rainforests, the most evocative and spectacular are tree ferns. And here at Kells Bay, they thrive in a way almost unequalled in the British Isles. But through the gates to this walled garden lies something I think most of you have never seen before. Here, for starters, is a tree fern that is growing out of the wall. This has come here from a spore, a minuscule spore. It has germinated within the wall. And what's so fascinating is that this trunk is not made of wood. It's made entirely of roots. This is something you just do not see in garden centre bought tree fern trunks. This is thriving, absolutely thriving in this perfect atmosphere for the growth of such beauties. Here is something quite extraordinary. Over 600 tree ferns, all over a century old. They just go on and on and on. This is a sight you would only really see in the temperate rainforests of Southeast Australia and Tasmania. In the British Isles, remarkable. These are all the species Dicksonia antarctica, the tree fern you are most likely to see in a garden centre. It's hardy down to around -10°C for short periods and needs sheltered, humid and dappled shade to thrive in a garden. Billy Alexander is the garden's owner, lucky man. So what got you so interested in tree ferns?
Well, I bought a small tree fern at a plant fair in Dublin around the mid-90s, and it just captured my imagination as a plant. And a few years later, this property came on the market in the early 2000s, and I bought this property, and I'm now the proud custodian of probably the biggest tree fern forest in the Northern Hemisphere.
Of all the gardens I've been to, I have never seen tree ferns planted to this sort of extent. What is the story behind this?
Well, my understanding is this tree fern here is about 120 years old, planted in the 1890s, and we believe that this is the mother plant of the tree fern forest outside there, which comprises about 4 to 5 acres of hundreds and hundreds of mature tree ferns, all over 12 foot tall.
So you're telling me that the entire garden and estate has been populated by this one tree fern?
Yes, this is the one.
Who would have thought one tree fern could spawn 1,000 and fill an entire garden?
I love that cathedral stained glass impression you get from the tree ferns. And there's one thing for certain, I'm going to get a tree fern or two here for Longmeadow. They're lovely. Are you sleeping, dogs? Are you coming with me? Okay, bye. Now, coming up, Jane Moore visits a small garden by the sea that is full of character.
I have a picture of what I want to create and what I want to do, and it's got to be there tomorrow.
We've got carrots with character too, enormous ones.
This is the most exciting bit.
But first, we visit Adam Frost as he continues his odyssey of creating a garden around his beautiful house in Lincolnshire.
Here we are the end of July, and do you know what? This garden just gets better and better. It's the light levels in the morning and the light levels in the evening are absolutely fantastic. And it makes the greens just sort of shine. I get here and I more or less have to stop for 5 minutes to actually enjoy, I suppose, just peace. This orchard is absolutely full of atmosphere. There's over 40 known local varieties down here in South Lincolnshire, and I'm really, really hoping that I've got one of them in behind me. What I'm going to do now, though, actually, do you know what, is leave until September, have a really good feast off them. Kids are going to enjoy them, and then we'll give them a really good prune in the winter. You lot have probably already worked out by now that I'm completely and utterly in love with this wisteria. And it's pruning time. And guess what? It's started flowering again. It looks stunning. So I haven't got the heart to prune it. I'm going to have to leave it another couple of weeks. But you look at it now, it looks completely different with the flowers and the foliage. But also there's a beautiful bronze tinge to the tips. And the scent is wonderful. Go. Sets are all in. Really pleased how this terrace has come together. All I've got left to do now is brush the kiln-dried sand in, and I don't want to actually add mortar and cement them because I'm happy actually for plants to seed themselves into the gaps. Also, you'll see that I've left the gaps where the soil's going to go, and we'll plant that up as well. But you can really start to understand that this sits in a much wider area. If you remember rightly, I was having a good old rant about front gardens and what they meant to me and the loss of them, and actually about this sea of gravel that washed right up to this beautiful old house and was doing it no justice at all. But now you can start to see the borders have gone in, and I can really feel that there's going to be a softness to this space. Talking about plants, look at the taxus. I mean, that's had so much sort of foliar feed and tender loving care, but it's responded really, really well. Anyway, I'll best get on. I'm using a soft broom to gently brush the sand into the gaps in all different directions across the paving. It's worth topping up here and there and brushing in a second time to ensure you fill all the gaps. The soil I'm going to use to fill the planting pockets is a free-draining sandy loam. It's a perfect soil mix for the plants that I hope are naturally going to seed themselves and flow through this area. In the veg garden, I've been cracking on with the hard landscaping. I've dug out for levels and a low retaining wall is now in place. I'm now at the stage to build the different beds and borders in which I'm going to grow all sorts of goodies. Raised beds really are a fantastic way to grow vegetables in any garden, but especially in a small garden. It doesn't matter about your soil because you're raising everything up. You can constantly improve the soil. You can get more crop into the space. So for me, they're absolutely brilliant. So what I've used here is what they've described online as half sleepers. So good sturdy piece of timber, but the most important fact for me is they're pressure treated. So that means actually they're good for outside. They're going to see that test of time and they're not going to rot away quickly. Sizes I've used, really, about 200 deep, which is 6 inches, by about 50 mil wide. But you can use whatever you want. For me, what this does, it's not as wide as a main sleeper, so it gives me a little bit more planting space inside. And then here in the corner, I've used these posts. You might be wondering why they're sticking up in the air. They work in 3 or 4 fold, really. One is they're fixed into the ground, so they give me sort of sturdiness in the corners. And what I've done is actually I've drilled each corner to hold everything together. But I've drilled through them as well. And you'll see what I can do is put a rope through each post. It means I can put a net or a fleece over the top. And one thing that really annoys me in the garden is when you're dragging the hose pipe around and all of a sudden it's gone up the edge and it's across the veggies. So actually this will stop that happening. And last but not least, you know when you're getting on a bit and actually you've been weeding all day and you might just need a hand to get up. So what I've done here is I've concreted them in, so that's a ballast and cement mix, about 8:1. That'll hold them in nice and firm. I'm going to paint them in a wonderful sort of deep grey colour, which will be a fantastic contrast to my core 10 planters. So the veg garden's not the only place I'm going to be growing edibles. I've got this idea for this wonderful big old border here and this south-facing wall. I suppose it's food for free, meets a taste of the unexpected. My plan is to plant a border that connects the veg garden with the breakfast terrace and continues that edible theme. I want to play with that whole idea of food that you can forage from the wild. But not just from this country. I want to use plants from across the world and take advantage of the warm microclimate on this south-facing wall. By using food here, not only will it have that lovely relationship with the veg garden, but I can use that idea and then wrap it all the way up around the breakfast terrace and along the front of the house. But I'm not going to rip this lavender out at the moment. I'm just going to let the bees enjoy that wonderful nectar.
Jane Moore has been a crossbred, looking at inspiring planting and design in small gardens. And this week, she's near Seaford in East Sussex.
With the sea only a stone's throw away, it's easy to see where this gardener got his inspiration. But I bet there have been a few battles with the elements along the way.
Jeff Stonebanks has been creating this garden for 12 years.
My goodness, what a little wonderland you've got here.
That's the usual reaction when people walk around that corner. Either their jaw drops or they say, wow. So you get the gold star.
I think I've done a combination of both, actually. Even though it's a lovely, balmy day, we're seeing it today. I can't imagine it's always like this, Jeff.
We had 64-mile-an-hour winds over the weekend.
Right, which most gardens would not handle at all well.
No. Well, this didn't, but yeah, we've worked some magic on it.
Absolutely, you certainly have. Well, it looks a picture.
And many people that live on the coast come and visit the garden and are interested to know what's growing here. And my answer to them nearly always is, you can grow anything by the sea if you look after it and create a sort of small microclimate for it.
And you've got some very interesting plants. I'm guessing there's some water there because I can see a gunnerer and some...
Well, the gunner's actually in a pot, and people always say, gunners are huge things, you walk under them, how can you grow them in a pot? But I desperately wanted one in this very small garden, and I went to Hampton Court a few years ago, and the guy selling them said, they'll grow according to the conditions you give them, so put it in a pot and it will grow accordingly.
I'm really keen to start exploring the garden. Can we go and have a look?
We can indeed, yes. There's lots to explore. Might be small, but there's a lot in it. One of my favourite areas along there. Quite stunning.
It seems like your garden's always got two sides. You've got a riot of colour down there, and then up here it's all serene and green.
The logic behind that is because, in essence, there's a degree of shelter from the winds from the sea in that corner behind the house, whereas because the garden slopes upward, this area here is a little bit more exposed. I planted 800 annuals in this garden this year, and I mean, I've probably only got 500 of them left because, again, it is survival of the fittest. But to get the effect, you need to densely plant and help them.
I love how you've used the sculptures to kind of tie up the whole garden.
I found that when we first came here, because the garden was so exposed, I had great difficulty getting height. It looked very one-dimensional as you looked out from the kitchen. So the sculpture is there really to get the height in the garden. I mean, behind you, we've got this umbrella. I mean, people look at that and wonder what it is, but it's actually a genuine Victorian topiary frame. Now, fortunately, the two really complement each other.
I love all these little corners that you've developed. This is particularly nice with the aeoniums and the echeverias.
Yeah, I mean, it's one part of the garden that I think you could reproduce anywhere because it's really perfect for a small courtyard garden, for a patio, or even a balcony, to be honest.
And, of course, they're always great in a small pot, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of small pots here with different things, in particularly in the tray there. But I mean, another nice addition is this chair, which cost me £1 from the local tip, took the seat out, put some pond liner in it with a hole in the bottom, and every year I put something different in it. This year we put this display of echiveriums in here and this beautiful Sagina lime moss in the centre, and it's amazing how many people remark on it.
It makes a really jolly little feature,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah, it
and
does.
of course, the great thing about using succulents is you don't need to worry about the watering either.
No, that's true, you don't.
Oh, I love this little framed area, but they all look like annual bedding plants.
I mean, if you saw this area in May, you'd get a real surprise because it's this beautiful set of steps that you can no longer see because I've just covered each side of it with a number of pots. There are about 10 large pots that line these steps, and I just fill them with annuals. I have a picture of what I want to create and what I want to do, and it's got to be there tomorrow. So that's why I use these pots and the annuals because, okay, it takes time for them to grow, but I can see what I want, and it turns out pretty spectacular.
It's pretty spectacular, as you say. Usually a small garden is more about what you leave out, but Jeff hasn't worried about that. Instead, he's packed everything he likes in and tied it all together with sculpture and art.
Come on. Come on. Oh, come on, bring it here. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. Bring it to me. Thank you. Very good girl. Now, it's bulb planting time. I've been planting bulbs into pots over the last month, but bulbs in grass or open ground is a much looser affair. I have a crocus here, Crocus thomasianus. It comes from the area around Bulgaria and Romania, from the side of hills, and it will grow perfectly well in deciduous woodland. Now, bearing in mind, this is deciduous woodland, and that means that the leaves all fall and there is nothing to stop the light coming through in early spring other than the branches themselves. And they flower as soon as there's a little bit of winter sunshine. It has a kind of very simple sort of shout of joy. It just opens like that, and this silvery lilac colour. And the great thing is that they seed very freely, so they'll spread. I'm going to plant this batch here in the copse around the graves of the dogs. This is a dog I had called Beaufort, who was buried here in '99, and this is Poppy's grave, and I think she was about 2003, 2004. And to have them flowering in spring will be a good thing. Now, it doesn't work if you plant bulbs in rough grass or in woodland, spotting them, trying to select the right spot. And the easiest and best way to do it is simply throw them on the ground and plant them where they land. And if that means planting them in odd batches and lumps and groups, doesn't matter, because they will look natural. So, like that. And then another batch there, and another batch there, and then put them in. Just make a hole and pop them in. And because the corms are so small, it's not worth having a bulb planter of any type. Just a sharp trowel does the job fine. If you can plant them a few inches deep, so much the better. And you see that I'm not worrying about putting them the right way up or anything like that. I'm just sticking them in. Of course, what you think is if I planted this, we'd have a tennis ball plant. Good boy. When you're planting any bulb into rough grass, you are making one commitment, and that is not to cut the grass until the foliage of the bulb, whatever it might be, has fully died back. And the reason for that is if you cut off the foliage too soon, the bulb won't be fed properly, so next year's flowers won't be so good or even not show at all. But the good thing about crocus generally and Crocus thomasianus in particular is very often these have completely disappeared by mid-May, and you can cut the grass back if you want to and keep it mown and treat it as lawn. So it does give you options. The whole point of this kind of planting is it takes you to that space where the tightly controlled world of horticulture meets the looseness of the natural world. And somewhere between the two of them, you get really beautiful, interesting things. However, sometimes the tightly controlled world of horticulture is something to be celebrated. And in Newark, in Nottinghamshire, Peter Glazebrook grows delightfully bonkers vegetables.
I've been growing giant vegetables as a hobby for 25 years, at least. I currently hold the record for the heaviest carrot, and that was in 2014, and it weighed exactly 20 pounds, and that beat the previous record, which had stood for well over 20 years, and so far I've held it, more importantly. I will say growing giant vegetables is a fun hobby, but it's serious to me to actually grow the stuff. I take it seriously. I try to research the best methods, keep records, ask other growers, go to seminars on growing, listen to Gardeners World. I'm quite pleased with this. It's a very dense beetroot, they're way heavy. Over the years, I've been fortunate enough to hold quite a few world records. I think the first world record I had was for a cucumber, from memory. But since then, we've had something like 15 world records. I've done reasonably well over the years with carrots and parsnips. I think, going back a long time, I think I did have the record for the heaviest parsnip, but that's been well beaten since then. I don't see if I'm good at it anymore. Not a good one, no. I followed the what they call the National Giant Vegetable Competition around the country. So we've travelled a lot up and down the country showing vegetables. Lots of people grow marrows, don't normally grow giant veg, so they can have a bit of luck and have a big marrow. Not everybody wants to be perhaps dedicated enough to really get to the top. I'll be talking to somebody and they'll say, well, we've just come back from a couple of weeks in Spain, and I think, all right, so I don't think you're going to win much. I wouldn't like to be away for a couple of weeks in the summer. You know that there, well, everything's lost, isn't it? Carrots, I've never done really well until the last few years, and since then I've come to the fore with them. I don't know whether it's just having the right seed or change my growing methods, but it's working anyway. So I've got basically a normal deep plant pot. I've cut a hole in the bottom. I'm going to turn it upside down so that the carrot will actually grow up through there. I'll sow the seed in the top. You can really grow a big carrot from seed that you can buy from a dedicated seed merchant. And if you can get a good strain of long carrot, really anybody could grow a big carrot. I've gained, I think, over the years with my weights by starting early in the greenhouse. So I'm sowing things like carrots in January in the greenhouse with heat, and once they've germinated, perhaps into February, putting artificial light on them. So that'll continue until obviously the weather and daylight improves, and I can plant out in the open ground in April. When I'm preparing the planting station in my half barrels, I mix my own free draining compost for that, but I incorporate a high phosphate and a high potash fertiliser in that at that time. We're lifting this carrot today for Harrogate Autumn Flower Show, which we have to stage overnight into Friday morning. It's a 3-day show over the weekend. The main thing with carrots, and parsnips, is to look at what sort of a crown there is. But it's a good start. Fingers crossed that it all comes out all right and a decent one. If not, well, I might have to dig another one. Get healthy foliage in. This is the most exciting bit, really. It's you're either really pleased with the, with the result, that you know, what you've grown, or you're disappointed. But I mean, either way, it's exciting.
Yes, yes.
Take that away, and then we can see what we've got. I mean, the whole aim of lifting the carrot for the show is to enter it in the class for the heaviest carrot. So it's important to get every little bit of taproot and, you know, every part of the carrot we can out of the ground, because it might just be that difference between winning and losing, or coming second, or not getting a prize at all. Now we're getting down to this woods, and it's gone very thin. The roots have gone very thin. We haven't got those big, strong, heavy roots that give you the weight. We might sort of get it if we can.
That's better. That's better.
Oh, we want a lot of that. Yeah? Good. It's a good lump of carrot, isn't it? It's you know, it's all weight. There aren't any faults with it.
That was worth it.
I don't think this is going to break my own record. Obviously, we can wait and see, but until I get it finally trimmed, you never know, really. I'm quite happy with it. It's a good one. It's a real solid. It is really. It's all solid all the way around, isn't it? Yeah, happy.
At the Harrogate Autumn Flower Show, Peter swept the board with his giant veg, including his monster carrot. I don't think Peter is going to be troubled by my carrots. This batch this year is, if not a disaster, it's a disgrace. Not good. There was very, very poor germination, and those that did germinate and grew never quite took off. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure why, because we had a very good carrot crop last year. That is pathetic. Pathetic. Now, most of these are a fairly regular carrot shape, without any embarrassing or otherwise hilarious oddities. The turnips and the kohlrabi are doing very well. There you go. And you just take off the foliage like that. And if you grate that, you can eat it raw. And then the turnips have grown really fast. Now, I love turnips. And turnips are a treat with a bit of brown sugar. So the turnips are coated in this kind of caramel, and you have a sweetness from that with the slight bitterness from the turnip. And it's a very good taste indeed. And this is the whopper. This is too big, I think. I like my turnips smaller than that. Yeah, that's a good size. That's about the right size for a turnip for me. These are Milan purple. We've got the chicory here, which is absolutely a winter plant, and I'll be taking off the lower leaves. I like that at this time of year. There's this sense of two seasons coming together, one which you're leaving in a great sort of bounteous harvest, and the other which you're entering and trying to manage so that in months to come, you'll have lots to pick. Now, you don't have to worry about months to come. Just think about this weekend, because here are some jobs. If you buy prepared hyacinth bulbs, they can be planted so that they flower indoors by Christmas. Use a gritty compost and leave a half to a third of the bulb above the surface. Water them and then put them somewhere dark. Check them every few weeks and don't let them dry out completely. Yew hedges can be cut later in the year than most other kinds, but now is the perfect moment. A good cut now will keep it looking crisp and trim right through winter and on into late spring. If you've got a young yew hedge like this one, just cut the sides and any extra long shoots on the top. Inevitably, windfalls drop from apple trees before they're really ripe. I like to put a container under each tree and then pop the windfalls in, and they can be used for juicing or cooking or eating raw if there's any ripeness to them. But to get the best from an apple, you need to pick it ripe and handle it with care. Twist each fruit carefully, and if it comes away in your hand, store it somewhere cool and dark, taking real care not to damage the fruit. Combination of the fake wasp nest and the screens across the door seem to have kept the wasps at bay. And it's looking good. It's looking a good harvest. I haven't harvested any yet. I have tasted a few. And this is black Hamburg, and we want the colour to be really quite rich, dark blue, almost black. Whoa, don't fall. There we are. Isn't it wonderful? Tastes lovely. Really nice. Well, I reckon that's a pretty good harvest. And we should get at least a basket of ripe grapes every week for the next month, 6 weeks or so. And that's a good thought. But I'm afraid no more good thoughts today, because that's the end of the programme. We'll see you back here at Longmeadow next time. Till then, bye-bye.